It's been about 7 months now since the last time I covered Chrono Odyssey, and I wanted to do a bit of an update video. There has been some news and new information on the game's development, with changes and improvements they've been making based on feedback from last year's playtest. And yes, the game needed some changes and improvements. I just like look at how bad this looks. Again, I'm on the high setting. I could bump it up to epic. It goes from looking, I think it's really, well, besides the pop-in and like poor textures, the strange overblown lighting, and it's weird because this is used in other games, but I think they're just like overusing the overexposure or something. If you happen to miss this one, Chrono Odyssey is one of the handful of new MMOs on our immediate horizon coming in the next couple years. It actually has some pretty cool ideas and features and does do a fair few things right. For starters, I quite enjoyed the combat. Like, as far as action MMOs go, it might not be the best, but it was solid feeling enough that it just felt good to play. Weapon swapping is snappy as hell. Use an ability, do a backflip, so I can activate the swap midair. A backflip and hit Q, and then when I land, it swaps instantly. That's pretty slick. I also appreciated its classic MMO structure. You got players everywhere in a big seamless open world with a good variety of content. All sorts of points of interest, open world bosses, dungeons, world events, and they even have these traversal challenge dungeons that I thought were honestly really cool. All right, so here's another trial. These have thus far for me basically been like obstacle courses, although I do believe some of them are more boss fighty. I am holding. Son of a... Did you just play a trick on me? This is cool as hell. So far, this is the third trial that I've seen. I genuinely really like it. This isn't like a MMO dungeon where you're clearing ads and then bosses. It's more obstacle coursey with some enemies in between. But I do like that. Like, I really do. And then just like the world itself, a lot of the environmental stuff, they're just was some cool looking locations. That it was an interesting world to kind of investigate and check stuff out in. Something else I really like about the game is some of the environments. Like this, look at this shit. This is cool. Look at this. I'm just like the spider cave. Looks like this is neat. I haven't seen this before. Just came across this. This looks pretty cool. You just literally stumble into these world bosses. Maybe they've got preset spawn locations. In fact, they probably do, if I were to guess. And there's like a bunch of them. I keep stumbling into them. However, despite me enjoying some aspects of it, it also had some pretty glaring issues. Probably top of the list was the fact that it was just an absolute technical disaster. Did that tree just pop in? It did. Look at that mountain range back there. Tons of game-breaking bugs throughout the entirety of my play session. What? Wait. What's happening? Where did the mountain go? What the f? I'm in the mountain. Oh, I'm swimming. I'm swimming in the mountain. All right. There it is. Many instances of very glitchy animations as well. Oh damn, something is wrong with their cloaks. They try to animate, but then they give up halfway through. Look at the cloak. Wait. Oh no, it looks better when I zoom in. Okay, something's going on here. Max camera zoom, it turns into a stiff board. So the closer your camera is, the more fluid the cloak. I don't understand. Is anyone a game developer? Does that make any flipping sense? Probably some of the worst pop-in in a game that I've ever seen. Oh no, this is the strobe light effect that I was telling you about. Look at this. Like, what the F is going on? Oh wait, where'd that rock come from? I've got draw distance detail set to high. Come on, guys. I don't know. You know what's funny too? I actually don't hate this game so far, but it's got a lot of it. Why is that? Why is that shrub disappearing as I get closer to it? This is awful, honestly. Also, it had some of the worst lighting that I've ever seen. It's so bad, like I rarely ever comment on lighting other than to say, oh, this looks pretty good. But this lighting was so bad, I couldn't help but notice it. Like I tried messing with the contrast and just trying to make it not look like this. Something with the lighting in this game is way off. This is like way too overexposed. Like it's fine when it's like that at time. It's just, I think they just have some tuning to do with when and how they use that overexposure, because it makes sense in instances like when you're coming out of a dark cave and then it's just like bright white. That's how it's supposed to be, but I don't know why it's this overexposed where I'm just like chilling in town. See what I mean? There's something wrong here. This is probably how it should more look like. But then all of a sudden it's like, what? I can't, I'm looking into the sun. What's happening? Parts of the world also felt really static and a bit lifeless. This looks like a game from 2000. Yeah, I mean, like if you really go back and look at the games from 2000, they definitely looked much worse, but it gives those vibes, I feel ya. Funny enough though, for me, that's like, it's almost nostalgic in that sense. I think that's part of the reason I like it. It's like, oh yeah. It's got that kind of static MMO feel to it. Like just this field, NPCs plopped in it. You know what I mean? Like that kind of vibe. Just like see these wolves like just chilling. And then lastly, while I mostly enjoyed the game's combat, it did have some pretty obvious issues. Namely, wonky hitboxes that were quite unreliable and unreadable at times, and enemy movement and attacks that felt heavily desynced, although that might just have been server related. And fact of the matter is that the game was in such a poor state that shortly after the playtest, based on feedback and some of the online discourse, no doubt, the developers came out with a blog post announcing that they were making sweeping changes to the game, massive changes to pretty much every primary system in the game, on top of some improvements to the laundry list of technical issues, some of which we went over. Then they also delayed the game's release by an entire year. It was originally supposed to come out just a couple of months after the playtest, like last year. Then they pushed it out into a release in 2026. Now, that is more or less everything that we kind of covered in my prior video. Since then, though, there's been a few updates, and it looks like they're actually taking steps in the right direction. So in late December, we got Dev Notes number 3. The goal of this was to start showcasing some of the changes that they've been making. Near the top of the post, they actually said, when we look back on the closed beta test held in June, it offered meaningful insights into both our progress and the challenges ahead. The test yielded an incredible amount of feedback with many positive impressions, as well as valuable critiques that helped pinpoint where we truly needed to grow. Since then, the team has been working tirelessly to make fundamental improvements across multiple core aspects of the game. And well, here are some of those improvements on display. So first off, we've got a brand new lighting system. This is going to apparently offer them greater freedom and control when shaping the mood of each area. Some areas will now appear clearer, while others will lean into a darker, more atmospheric tone. And the video shows us several different environments and how this new lighting system compares to what they had prior, and it does indeed look significantly better. A big issue that they had before were things looking really washed out with a lot of overexposure as well, and this new lighting looks nice, like it's a good improvement. They've also made improvements to address visual inconsistencies on surfaces and materials, along with optimization to character rendering, both of which should help reduce GPU load for some improved performance. They've made monster hitbox improvements. This was a big issue of mine, as I mentioned earlier. Many of the hitboxes just felt wrong. Now they've made adjustments so that they now more accurately align with what players are seeing on screen, with this video showcasing a few examples of hitbox adjustments to different enemies and their attacks. Also in the playtest, the lock-on camera had some really odd issues. Some of the angles led to you not actually being able to physically tell what the hell was going on if you were locked onto especially a larger boss, with the camera shifting to a point where even the grass could obstruct your view. Well, now they have fixed it to have better angles so that this should no longer be the case. And then finally, they wrapped up this dev notes by saying they've made the first of many planned optimization passes and improvements to just yield in better performance of the game. So that was Dev Notes 3, then we got Dev Notes 4, this came in late January, and this one primarily focused on improvements to the game's combat, which again, I already thought had a solid foundation, but just needed some tweaks. Well, those tweaks are in the works, specifically aimed to help improve game feel, removing some of the sluggishness and input latency. So for starters, controls and responsiveness. During the playtest, movement and skills were tied to your camera direction, so you would move and attack wherever your camera was facing. Well, now they have decoupled movement from the camera, so you can be moving in one direction and looking in another, which is pretty huge. On top of that, they've added left-right strafe running for better evasion of enemy attacks and positioning of your character. Attack direction changes because it's no longer tied to the camera. Attacks and skills will now happen in the direction that your character is facing, so you could be fighting an enemy on one side and then be looking in the opposite direction just to kind of check behind you to see if anyone else is sneaking up without stopping the attacks that you're doing on the enemy. There's have been some sprint input improvements. They removed the wind-up animation so that movement feels more responsive. Basically, you'll start sprinting instantly upon the sprint input. And this is actually one of the common complaints when people say movement feels sluggish. A lot of it has to do with wind up and wind down animations for that movement to start, as opposed to you going at full speed the second you hit that input or move in a direction or change direction. You know, when you hear people talk about how WoW's movement feels really crisp, it's because you're moving at full speed and you spin and you turn in the direction the second you hit the change, the WASD. Well, a lot of these kind of more action-oriented games will have a wind up and wind down, and that can feel sluggish if it takes some time to change direction, if it takes some time to get up to max speed. Apparently they've removed that, so it should be pretty much, I don't know if it's going to be instantaneous, but it's going to be much quicker than it was. Also, the jump landing animation, this was kind of a funny quirk. So it used to be the case that after you did, while you were running and you did a jump, when you landed, you would do a roll, which sent you forward. This caused many players, myself included, to fall off of ledges unintentionally, especially during some of the game's traversal puzzles. Well, they have removed that now, so if you're running and jumping, it's not going to stop in a roll that carries your momentum and moves you forward. You just stop where you stop. They got rid of that. I honestly think that's kind of a nice change. You could manage the dodge roll, but it felt a little weird, and it felt like something to overcome, basically. Now on to some of the combat impact and feedback changes. They've made several tweaks to combat to make it feel more impactful and have better feedback. So hit reactions will now be more pronounced. It shouldn't feel like you're swinging at the air. There's more visible feedback. This applies to both enemies as well as your character. And they've also introduced this guard crush system, so blocks will now consume stamina, and at 0, guard crush will occur that leaves you defenseless. You also have to pay attention to attack angle, because if you're struck from the side or behind, blocking will be ineffective, so you actually have to face your shield towards the incoming impact. And also, attack intensity will matter, with there being heavier hitting attacks that consume more block stamina and also displace your character as well. And then a couple of crowd control related changes. They've said that knockback durations have been reduced, so you should regain control of your character faster. And then previously, a lot of bosses were completely immune to crowd control. Any CC effects you did nothing. Well, they've replaced that with a conditional system so that if you use crowd control abilities like stuns and slows and freezes or whatever, it's going to build up a meter that lets you interrupt them once that meter is full. And then finally, they highlighted a couple of miscellaneous changes. So health potions are no longer consumable items. Instead, this is just a permanent rechargeable system. You're going to have health flask or a potion. You use it, it recharges. Maybe you'll have multiple charges, we don't know. Food, prior to this, food would just be healing, kind of like how it works in like the Elder Scrolls or something. You eat some cabbage, it heals you up. That's not the case anymore. Food is no longer a healing item. Instead, they're going to provide long-term buffs, like stat buffs and move speed buffs, etc. And they've added new special potions with big effects for short durations. Maybe increase your crit chance by 30% for 30 seconds or something, just making something up, or increase magic damage or whatever, something along those lines. They've removed the dueling flag because this would get right between you and the opponent that you were dueling and kind of made the duel a little awkward. I also wonder if it blocked ranged attacks, I'm not sure, but it's now got visible boundaries of the duel and the flag is gone. They've added trajectory arc for throwable objects to just make it more visible, the way that the thing that you're throwing is going to go. And they've done some improvements to weapon swapping visuals as well. And then finally, the last big thing that we got was Dev Notes 5. This was the most recent one. It came in early May, and it focuses on character progression, class balance, and some big quality of life improvements, as well as server structure changes, which I think you'll want to hear. Okay, first up, we got this new character and class progression system called the Matrix system. This is, quote, a node-based progression system that moves away from linear paths, allowing characters to be tailored to specific combat styles. This system is designed to maintain the unique identity of each class and weapon while offering a more specialized combat experience. So during the playtest, you basically had a skill tree for your class's weapons. Every class could use certain weapons, and those weapons came with certain skill trees, and that had like a couple of branching paths with a few decision points that you can make, but overall it was a fairly limited system. Well, it sounds like, and I say sounds like because we haven't gotten explicit examples or showcases, but it sounds like this Matrix system might be more akin to something like the skill tree in Enshrouded, or on the extreme end, that of a game like Path of Exile. So they say in the new skill matrix, you're going to choose a path that suits your need, unlocking skills and stats, and the choices that include doing things like improving your cast speed, effects, and various other combat elements, with the goal here being more variety between people playing the same class. But yes, unfortunately, they didn't show us a video or an image of what this matrix system will look like, but that's just kind of what I'm intuiting based on what they're saying. There is a new supporter system, and simply put, this is a method that lets you enlist the help of NPC companions during challenging boss encounters. During the playtest, the first major Chrono Gate boss proved to be rather difficult for many people, especially if you weren't playing a ranged character, and this system essentially directly addresses that. If you like, you can have an NPC join your party to help you make certain encounters a little bit easier. That's the TLDR here. Monster equipment. This is actually really cool. They've added a bunch of new gear in the game that mirrors the appearance as well as the characteristics of enemies you fight. And I just love this. Any game that does it so that if I go out there hunting wolves, they can drop a wolf pelt that I put as a cloak on my back. I think that's really cool. They go out even further, though, to call out being able to get full gear sets modeled after the various world bosses in the game. And yeah, I think this is a W. It's just an awesome addition and inclusion to pretty much any RPG or MMO or whatever. And then a couple of quality of life things. So there are now height indicators added to your compass. This wasn't the case in the past, so you could get a compass pointing you to an objective in a direction, but if it was like a cliff, a huge cliff with a couple of cave entrances, you would have no clue where amongst that it was. Well, now there's a height indicator to say if it's above you, your level, or below you. Also, quest markers are now going to be visible on the game's world map, and there are new world map icons with status indicators which will clearly inform you if a dungeon or a point of interest has been discovered, undiscovered, and whether or not you have cleared it. So you can tell, hey, have I been to that cave? It's on my map. Have I been there? Yes. Have I cleared it? Yes. That you'll be able to get all that information quickly at a glance at the map. And then the final thing, though, and maybe one of the biggest changes, is they have now added a multi-channel architecture to bolster server stability and manage player density. In other words, layering in some form is now in the game to manage the total number of players that you're going to see in any area, and as such, the number of people you have to load in and the effect that has on the server stability. So yes, they're going to have a channel system or a layering system, which is pretty much par for the course in any big modern day MMO nowadays. Guild Wars 2 does it, World of Warcraft Retail does it, even World of Warcraft Classic does it, ESO does it. I don't really know many games, many big MMOs nowadays that don't do it. Maybe Albion Online, but even that I'm not entirely sure. So, you know, it's a big point of debate, especially amongst the MMO community. We love arguing about our favorite genre as to whether or not this is a good or bad thing. I'm mostly indifferent as long as the phasing and the layering doesn't like get in the way of a play session. I'm okay if there is layering or channels on my server, as long as I don't experience those transitions in the middle of playing. I don't want to be out grinding mobs in an area and then randomly get phased into another layer and have mobs spawn behind me, or different players that are now farming the spot that I was solely farming on my prior layer. Like, when stuff like that happens, I hate it. But if it just exists and it's kind of in the background and does, maybe you do layer phases every time you go to town or something, but never when you're out in the open field. whatever. I don't mind it in theory, as long as it, again, doesn't get in the way of the playing experience. If it's not like a very obvious point in time in which I'm seeing that layering happening and it's disrupting something that I'm doing, you know what I mean? That's my general thoughts on that. So that pretty much covers all of the recent major updates over the past few months since our last video for Chrono Odyssey. And I gotta say, you know, whether or not this game is gonna get the necessary changes in time for when it comes out, it's to be determined. However, despite the issues that we discussed, I did see a glimmer of hope for what could be a great MMO. As I mentioned at the top, there was a fair bit that I enjoyed during the playtest. Top of the list, the game's combat was good. It's a proper MMO with all those MMO systems, all the points of interest, the world bosses, tons of players all over the place. Maybe a little fewer players now that they have this channel system. But yeah, and it has a lot of what I would hope for in a new MMO. It just had so many technical issues and a lot of rough edges. But it sounds like they're doing the work, you know, that these dev updates do sound promising. And if they actually iron out all of those technical issues, it could work out. I will say at least they've given themselves plenty of runway here. As mentioned, initially the game was supposed to launch last year. Like they had that playtest and the game was supposed to come out a couple months later, but then they realized everyone's like, yo, this has got a lot of problems. They said, okay, well, we're gonna go back to the drawing board. We're gonna change a lot. And they delayed it until 2026. Well, that's gone even further now because during Kakao Games' earnings call last February, we learned that the new scheduled release for Chrono Odyssey is Q1 2027. So it's now been pushed into next year. So it's going to be a while until this thing fully releases. If you wanted to play it again, though, I do believe they're targeting some more beta testing sometime this summer. So we'll get another chance to check out how their updates have gone. Hopefully, that's my hope. I want to check this out again. I want to see it because yes, there was enough that I liked about it, and I want to see if they've just continued to improve it. And yeah, frankly, good. I mean, take as much time as they need to fix all of the issues that we saw last year and give it its best chance of success. That's all for today. Thank you as always for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you think about Chrono Odyssey. Are you looking forward to it? Did you try the last playtest? Did that completely like squash any hope that you had? Or do you think that the steps that they're taking, the changes they're making, and the over a year delay that they've added is going to make a difference? We'll find out either way, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks, guys. I'll see you next time. Take it easy.